let's get started with the third question. So now comes the German unification, and then we're going to talk about one question from Italian unification. And yes, don't worry, I'm going to talk about Sardinia, Piedmont anyway. So the question is, examine main features of the process of German unification. You have to talk about the main features. So I'm going to talk and underline the content that they're looking for in this answer. It's the main features of process of German unification. Not the German unification, the complete story, but whatever events took place under the leadership of Ottoman Bismarck. Okay, so the answer goes like, see, the entire story revolves around that, you know, there was widespread discontentment in Germany, like people from middle class, they sort of tried to unite themselves to form a German confederation to bring all the divided units together so that they can have a common union. But what happened is, all this was done, and in Germany all this was done, the union was being done or established under the leadership of Prussia. So when I say yes, Prussia is one of those important states that brought about a revolutionary change in German unification. So there we had a chief minister, in Germany the chief minister is generally known as the chancellor. So this kind person, Ottoman Bismarck, he is considered as the chief architect of this entire process. So before you kickstart with your answer, please make sure that you write a very good introduction that yes, Ottoman Bismarck is considered as the chief architect of the unification, unification, or maybe German unification for that matter. And then you're going to kickstart your points that the story started that all the people came together. Then you're going to move on to the next step, that under the leadership of Prussia and its chief minister, the step was carried forward, and Prussian army and sort of bureaucracy helped the entire process. It was that they had to wage a war against Russia for 3 years. It was against Russia, it was against Denmark, it was against France. So there were not 3 years, I'm sorry, it was 3 wars that were fought for a span of 7 years. A long story, but still these people, they were determined that they're gonna come over all the upheavals, and this ended in the 7 wars. It's just 4 sections that history has. It's history, economics, pol science and geography. But these people here in Germany were so determined that okay, whatever comes our way, we are not going to give up. So yes, they fought almost 7 wars. Fought for almost 7 years. That was just 3 wars. And finally this helped in Prussian unification, the victory of Prussia, and sort of German unification. When that happened, finally in January 1871, the Prussian king Wilhelm, he was proclaimed as the German emperor, and and this was done at the German new empire. This was done at Versailles. So all this struggle sort of shows that with the efforts of Prussian state and under the leadership of Ottoman Bismarck, who's considered as the chief architect, whatever came their way, they sort of took it on themselves, and they just moved forward, they marched forward. So the very first point that you guys are going to address in this question, let's go back and revise. When it comes to a 3-mark question, you have to mark these 4 basic points. Give the introduction that yes, Ottoman Bismarck is considered as the chief architect of German unification. Then you're going to start the story that yes, the middle class was getting agitated, and they sort of they tried to unite the different regions to have different regions of German confederation to build a nation state. And then finally Prussia took up this clause to unite Germany, and this was done under its leadership of chief minister, what you call it, Chancellor Ottoman Bismarck, helped by Prussian army, taken up by bureaucracy, the efforts, and then fighting 3 wars over a span of 7 years, like with Denmark. It's how you can remember these countries. again there's an acronym, like whatever the case may be, I have a good acronym in this case also. I'm going to share it with you. It's DAF, DUF. So Denmark, Austria and France. It's short for, it's P versus DUF. So you're going to remember it this way, even if you've not read the chapter as of now or not revised. And finally, in Prussia, Wilhelm was declared as the, or proclaimed as, you know, the head. And finally, the new German Empire took, that was headed by Kaiser William. The ceremony was conducted at the Palace of Versailles, and finally he was proclaimed as the emperor. So this is what they expect you, all the relevant information, all the important dates. So here I would like to bring to your notice, if you're not aware or if you're not very sure about the date, to be precise and exact, please don't mention the date, because that's not going to help you gain marks. It's anyway you guys are going to lose marks on that. So jumping on to the next question, that is, describe the process of unification of Germany. So now they've not explicitly mentioned to speak about or asked you to talk about Ottoman Bismarck, the contribution of Prussia, but they've asked you to describe the entire process of unification of that particular country, that's Germany. So okay, I'm going to kickstart with the story, but again in this case you guys have to give this introduction that despite whatever case may be, it was Ottoman Bismarck, the chief minister, who was known as the chief architect of German unification. That should be your opening sentence or the opening clause, how you're going to start the answer, and then you're going to start the summary. Divide it into sections like I have done. Divide it into 3 sections if it's a 3-mark question, and you should be aware to split these 3 sections into 5 marks. 5 pointers, just in case this question has been asked for 5 marks. Okay, so the very first story, and I'm going to tell you the story. How it goes is, what happened is in 1848, you know, they sort of the first attempt, they sort of bring a first attempt to establish or to set up remove the absolute monarch and have a constitutional monarch. So what you're going to start the point with is, the very first effort was either you say that yes, a constitutional monarchy was set up under the first point, and then is, you know, explain the statement that they did this by, you know, having a parliament that met at Frankfurt. Second point, you're going to make sure that this sort of assembly that they assembled for to make sure that the German Confederation comes into shape, it made it clear that, you know, Germany is going to be unified, but that is going to be done by the combined efforts of monarchy and, you know, military support that they're going to get. That was done by landowners. So they there was a, you know, assembly failed because the landowners, the monarchy and the landlords, who should probably support this entire process, they went against the middle class or the militia that stood against or the monarchy or stood for their rights. So there was a war, the assembly versus the monarch, the military, the landowners would have been in support of this. They want it, like they should be supporting the country to bring the country together, to unite the people, but they never did that. They instead, you know, dismantled all the assembled people there. And finally this effort was taken over by Ottoman Bismarck from Prussia in 1848, that I'm going to take the leadership of the movement to unify this country. And like I told you in the last question, it is Prussia versus DAF. DAF is Denmark, Austria and France, that sort of fought for 7 years, and there were 3 wars, and still Prussia did not give up, and finally it came victorious, and then Wilhelm was declared as the Emperor of German state. Okay guys, so let's jump on to the next question. This is all that you have to write. You have to give, you've talked about the parliament at Frankfurt, you've talked about the opposition the parliament had to face, by whom the opposition came, and third you talked about the efforts made by Prussia, Ottoman Bismarck, and the war. So basically you've covered all the important characteristics or all the important points. So here I want to stress again, even if you don't know the entire story and you just know the pointers, anyway it's going to help you score well, because then you can frame proper sequence of event. So when it comes to social studies, please look into the clauses like what led to the movement, what was the sequence of events, what followed, what were the important dates in that case. So I'm again mentioning it right here. If you guys are not very sure about the dates or the month and you're not very sure that it's gonna work, please don't write it. Please don't take the risk to mention the date and give opportunity to your teacher to, you know, reduce your marks or deduct your marks. So jumping on to the next important question, that's Italy. Now imagine I don't know anything about Italy. Anyway, what I'm going to do is, now I don't know anything about Italy, so what basic overview I'm going to give here is, I'm going to divide it, like write it here, Italy, and then it was divided into 7 states, chucked into 3 sections. Middle section was ruled by the Pope. The southern section was dominated by Spain, and the topmost section, it was ruled by Austria-Habsburg Empire. So this is what I know, and I'm going to mention it right here that this is the division, right? So apart from Sardinia, Piedmont, that was the only state that was ruled by the Italian state. Every other state was ruled by some or the other person or some or the other kingdom that did not had any links with Italy. So what happened? So I have given a very clear overview that yes, I know the contents of this answer, that Italy was divided into 7 states. Divided it further, you can segregate into 3 sections, that yes, the topmost section was ruled by Austria, then Pope, and then Spain, it was ruled by the Spain sort of ruled the southernmost section where peasants revolted. So what is the process of unification? See, Italy had basically a very long history of that political division, 7 divisions, and then just Sardinia, Piedmont was the state. So I'm going to underline here that Sardinia, Piedmont was the only state that was ruled by Victor Emmanuel II, who became, Italy was basically, I would say, a multinational empire. So under the efforts of this person Mazzini, that sort of had 2 secret societies, was sent to exile. Yes guys, I'm talking about that person who was a revolutionary. So he sort of tried to unite Italy by setting up 2 secret societies. Now they were known as Young Italy, but however his efforts sort of failed. He was sent to exile. He didn't know, his actions were not respected to the extent they should have been. So finally all this responsibility after the failure of Mazzini got onto the shoulders of Victor Emmanuel II. So because he had that state that had links with Italy, the house had been connected with Italian states, so his shoulders, he had that responsibility on his shoulders to bring together all the states to have Italian unification. So he bought out every possibility, he checked on every possibility to track the political and to gain the political and economic gain, so that the country could be brought together and unified on some guidelines. So that is the entire process that you guys gonna follow. There's a complete story. You have mentioned all the important features, all the important characters associated with the story. You've also talked about the division in Italy. So there's nothing that you've left. You've given a view of how Italy was ruled, you've given the content, and then you're gonna get marks anyway. Let's jump on to the next question. Okay, so some part again of Italy is left. So 2 pointers are left, I'm sorry. So what happened is Cavour was the chief minister. because Sardinia-Piedmont has this responsibility, so Cavour sort of took the movement to the next level. So because he was aware of the French language, so he sort of established an alliance with the French people and sort of defeated Austria. Garibaldi, after the just remember gig, it's G-I-G. Now what's gig? This is what is the G stand for. In this case, G is the first G you can give to Garibaldi, then I stands for Italy, and the other G, of course, it stands for this person, that is Giuseppe Mazzini. Now here I wanted to make sure that you guys know that you can remember it with acronyms. Now the acronym related to Italy is going to be GIG, right? It's going to be Mazzini, then it's going to be Italy, then it's going to be Garibaldi, right? And the acronym related to Germany was anyway DUF. They had that fight, 7-year fight for a span with almost 3 wars, defeating and Prussia coming victorious out of that. So what happened is, because Sardinia-Piedmont had the responsibility, Cavour took up the responsibility that okay, I'm going to do something. He took France towards his side and sort of defeated Austria in 1859. Finally, what happened is, the Garibaldi, he sort of got support of all those local peasants. Like I told you that the southernmost section was ruled by Spanish people, and they were outthrown by the efforts of Garibaldi, who got the support of all the local peasants there. And finally, the Victor Emmanuel was declared as the Emperor of Italy in 1861. So let's get started with the revision of this answer. A very important question, can be asked in 5 marks. So I'm going to give you a complete overview of the story. So the very first is Italy divided into 7 states, split into 3 sections. Only Italian states, the next relevant information is that you guys can underline here is, only Italian state was Sardinia-Piedmont, ruled by Victor Emmanuel II. Mazzini sort of tried to bring changes or unify Italy, but however his efforts were not acknowledged and he was sent to exile, and he even did come up with 2 important revolutionary societies or secret societies to bring change. And then the entire responsibility, because Mazzini's efforts anyway failed, so the entire responsibility for it actually fell on the shoulders of Victor Emmanuel, who was crowned as the emperor because of his chief ministers, and Garibaldi, who sort of got the local support of the peasants and overthrew the Spanish rulers and unified Italy as a country.